David, my name is Tom Wheel. I've only lived at 70 Woodfield Road for 10 years, so my comments are going to be appropriately succinct. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you on this very important subject. I don't know whether you're deserving of all the abuse you've got, but I appreciate you being here to listen to it. While other portions of the proposed plan seem to make sense, I'm opposed to that element of the plan, as I understand it, that might result in the development of a substantial portion of the Woodbridge Country Club property. First, why would anyone want to so profoundly alter the nature of that tract? What's the justification? I fail to see it anywhere in the 160 pages of the plan. The plan talks about providing housing for the transitional elderly. I wasn't sure whether that was a euphemism for not yet dead, but I see no evidence that Woodbridge needs the type of housing that's being proposed. Where's the demand for this type of housing? Why do you think that aging Woodbridge residents would prefer to exchange a nice house on 1.5 or more acres for a small dwelling, jammed up against light structures in a geriatric community, rather than, say, moving to Florida, which is what the people who sold me my house did? Why isn't this being left to the market to determine? Especially when the plan also notes that home sales have been off in Woodbridge in recent years. Does adding to the supply make any sense? Second, not specifically a part of the plan, but there's clearly no critical financial need to take a developer's money. This town has a balanced budget. This town just voted $14 million for school improvements that provide little benefit for many of us who live here. Why can't we vote to fund half that amount to save the WCC property? Third, we've not been provided with a clear vision of what's proposed to be done on the site. The last plan put forward by a developer, which was insultingly adverse to the interests of this community, was rightly and roundly rejected. Something as fundamental as changing the zoning status of this property should not be addressed before the citizens of Woodbridge have had yet another opportunity to consider a detailed development proposal which guarantees that the town will realize any prospective benefits of any development, whether or not the developers are successful in effecting their plans. By the way, I spent 20 years as a project development and finance attorney in one of the largest law firms in the country, and the fact that the Toll Brothers plan was not rejected out of hand is something of an indictment of the professional acumen of those in town management who advocated for it. My last comment is intensely personal. The development of the WCC tract would largely destroy the reason for which I moved to Woodbridge, which was the openness of the land adjacent to my home on Woodfield Road. The primary benefit I get from living in the wonderful town of Woodbridge is my proximity to those undeveloped greens, fields, lakes, and trees. Once lost, that haven will never be recovered or restored, and I don't want to lose any of that, unless there are compelling and convincing reasons to make that change, and no one has been able to make that argument to date. Thank you.
Greetings, Chairman, August members of this esteemed commission. My name is William J. Fox, also known as Bill. I live at 18 Tanglewood Lane, and I'd like to share with you some observations that go back 10 years to when this commission produced the prior town plan of conservation and development. I sat in those very chairs. I brought before the town, along with my colleagues, some of them are here tonight, this plan. A lot has changed in 10 years. When I sat in your seats, there was a crew of people who came in and marched before us to express their support. Not one person has marched before us tonight to express support. I asked, what happened? When I sat there, we went through this town plan chapter by chapter, directly. We invited the community. The community came. It opined. We listened. We captured We turned it around in a town plan that was widely adapted, that was well received, that had none of the rancor that you're experiencing tonight. When I sat there 10 years ago, I was glad I was sitting there. I was thrilled to contribute something to this town, and it was appreciated, and it was well regarded. Unfortunately, that is not your experience tonight. I ask again, what has happened? I don't understand what has happened. I hope you understand what has happened. I would like to share with you my experience and the benefits of that, having gone through a similar experience, but in a much more positive light that unfortunately we are not going to have tonight. I would like for you to consider that perhaps your compass is off. The town would not be here otherwise in expressing such concern and disappointment with what has been provided tonight. I ask that you recalibrate. I ask that you look within yourselves and you start from scratch, because the town does not like this plan. And you can't sit there tonight and talk amongst yourselves and try and convince yourselves otherwise. On that note, I'd like to say thank you.
Hi, my name is Roger Sherman. Live at 5 Fairview Road. I see a lot of my neighbors out here tonight. Good to see everybody come out. Got a good turnout. And everybody's like in the same line here. You know, we're all on the same thing. We want our open space. We like the town the way it is. I used to live in North Jersey. I grew up there. I saw my town get developed until there wasn't any space at all. And then when there's no space, they tore the houses down and built up. It was ridiculous. I went to a fine high school, Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. One golf course left there, High Mountain Golf Course. But it will not be there anymore. We have a developer coming in there that decided to take advantage of a state regulation for low-income housing. So they took the town to court and sued them into submission. And now they're stuck with 160 or so townhouses that's going to devastate their school system. And I'd like to tell you, that is our developer coming to this town, Toll Brothers. They're here to make money. They don't care about our town. They don't care about the money. You know, this is a very unique town. It's not like Milford, New Haven, Derby. We're already seeing the overcrowding here. I tell people I live in Woodbridge, and they envy me. You know, I don't have a big house. I have a small house, but I'm proud of it. You know, and as far as the Woodbridge development, and you change that zoning, it'll be a shame. You know, and I agree with Martha, my neighbor. I have an 85-year-old lady behind me. Great lady. Her husband, she passed away, and I help her any way I can. I help the neighbors. And they help me. And they're here to help the town. And they'll be out here to vote any referendum that comes up for any development on that course. That could be a moneymaker. We bought that piece. But we don't see the value. We're letting the clubhouse run into the ground. It's a sound building. If we would have just put out an RFP, put a roof on it, paint it, have somebody else come in there, lease it, and make it a banquet facility, the plan would work. Because you hamper Philly Casper Golf, people come here and play golf. They don't have anywhere to go have lunch or beer after. But still, it did very well this year. Give it a chance. And all the people down in the flats, you're part of Woodbridge. You know? Hey, we now 2 family houses down there. You know, if they have people come in, you're gonna overflow the school system. You know, people need a break down there. You know, they deserve just as much as the people in Upper Woodbridge have. So, we had to have a petition for a non-zoning change for the Upper Woodbridge. If anybody would like to sign it, we have it here today. Thank you very much.
Product of St. Aidan's Grammar School, this script. Good evening, everyone, and members of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. I have particular knowledge and experience of your role and your responsibilities, and can say with pride and fond recollection that I worked for 2 years with some of you who are currently on this commission in my total of 8 years from 2001 and 2009, being so privileged to serve our town. When I echo Mr. Broderick, my fellow brother at that time, his comments, in 2002, 2003, when we began the undertaking which resulted in the current town plan of conservation and development, the town had not done so in 25 or so years. And we did that, and I just want to correct our friends from Mylone and McBroom. There is no direct prohibition or penalty coming from the state for failure to update the town plan every 10 years. Merely funds, grants, emoluments may be withheld. Just another troublesome and worrisome mistake by our paid consultants here. So, it not having been done for about a quarter of a century, we too undertook a search. We had quite a few firms come in front of us, all well credentialed on paper, all from out of town. We picked what we thought at the time was the best one. It was a blue chipper. And we signed a contract with them for far less than this body signed with Mylone and McBroom. Nonetheless, we began our work. And as we started to develop ideas and exchange ideas, and frankly, under the aegis of our consultants, we started to hear discordant notes, strange things, and unfamiliar terms, to the point where we asked more questions. And we got even stranger sounds and signals emanating from our consultant. And then it dawned on us that our consultants just don't know this town. And so we fired them.
we undertook on our own, just citizen soldiers of this town, just like you gentlemen and your sisters who aren't here tonight. We undertook, at a lot of time, and frankly, a lot of fun, sometimes till 2 o'clock in the morning at people's homes, to produce the plan. And then the bedrock of the plan was to respect what had gone on before and seemed to have worked for so long in this town with an unseen hand of regulatory government adhered to by everyone, commercial, residential, alike in this town. A spirit that was adopted and followed and cherished and preserved for decades in this town. And that was our guiding principle. To safeguard and nurture that spirit, to maintain the integrity of neighborhoods, to uplift neighborhoods that had been neglected, with an abiding spirit and knowledge and faith in the concept of zoning. And I submit that the language that is embedded in the proposed current town plan of conservation and development is an alien. It is a bacterium. It is a Trojan horse, which, if included and referenced in this town, permits this board or any subsequent board to use that language as a springboard to other things, such as 3-family houses, such as changing zoning. Zoning is the soul of this town. There is nothing wrong with the zoning in this town. I have never ever heard, up until recently, people say, there's something wrong with zoning in Woodbridge, we've got to change it, we've got to change the character of our town. The character of our town is so imbued in our hearts and in our souls that we sometimes take it for granted. Just drive around. See how few fences, see how few structures there are that impede the visual access. Listen to your senses and you'll hear the hum, not of a city, very little traffic, but of the birds and frankly the splendid quietude of nature. And all along is this wonderful compact among us citizens to respect each other's privacy. Imagine with this plan and its ramifications driving up Fountain Street tonight and seeing the glow in the night sky where the Toll Brothers facility is now in place. And by the way, I'm aware that the First Selectman has engaged a private attorney to opine as to language or a mechanism whereby some floating / spot zoning might pass muster with regard to the country club parcel. Don't chase that. Don't chase that red herring. Because you had the first shot in that war fired tonight by Attorney Farrell, who's looking for equal treatment at Oak Lane. Think about the change to this town. Now, I don't want you folks to quit. I want you to do what you've always done. Act in good faith, in the best interests of this town, in the spirit and the reverence for what our mothers and fathers did for this town over time and have made it far different from the other 168 cities and towns in this state. People can go live in one of those towns. And finally, there is no reason to jeopardize and risk the soul of this town chasing the great white whale of some specious money coup with this country club property. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Paul Rossi, 109 Ansonia Road, and I'm very grateful to be here tonight, and I had some observations, comments about the plan of conservation and development. Actually very much in kind with some of the comments we've already heard. My wife Allison and I are 20-year residents of Woodbridge, and we've raised a family here. And one of the things that has always struck me is what a remarkable town we live in. Next to Bethany and Orange, Woodbridge is clearly a very, very unique place. Not many years ago, I came upon a copy of the Beers map. It's an 1868 map of the town of Woodbridge, which I very proudly have up in our family room. And living on Ansonia Road, one of the original roads, of course, in town, now a state road, it is immediately recognizable on the Beers map, as are Rimmon and all the other roads in the town of Woodbridge. And I'm extremely, and have always been very struck by the fact that the very, very bucolic nature of this town, the layout of its original roads, how it's the same town almost. Of course, much has changed, but much of the profile of this town would certainly be very familiar to somebody who came back from the 19th century. It has really, really left a very great impression on me of what a stellar town we have, given that the existing zoning allows for the balance of growth that the town has seen over the past decades with maintenance of a very, very rural character. So, as I reviewed the plan, page 27 recommends adopt revisions to the Residence A zone to provide for active adult and open space conservation subdivision options. I had to kind of struggle with that one because it mentions conservation in the same breath as subdivisions. Page 27 further advocates that the town pursue development of proposals for age-restricted lifestyle housing on Country Club of Woodbridge property, which may include higher density housing. So it really became immediately clear that the imperative is subdivisions or cluster housing on the Country Club of Woodbridge. And I would like to just very, very sincerely point out that I believe that the needs for the Country Club of Woodbridge and the plan, the development of this town be looked at somewhat independently. The fiscal urgency or fiscal circumstances around the Country Club of Woodbridge cannot be denied. But I think that the intelligent, very process-oriented approach towards development of the town should be considered with all of the alternatives that are there and available to us, keeping in mind trying to guard and protect the character of this town. I believe that, of course, the development of cluster homes on the Country Club site would change the character of our town, would impair the scenic beauty and the country environment of the vicinity of Johnson and Woodfield and Ansonia Road. It would create precedents for other spot zoning and for cluster homes in other locations in town. And I think that the plan speaks very clearly at page 73 in regard to the section on build-out, that this town is not without additional space for development. At page 73, the plan states that another 613 units could be built under current zoning and development regulations, enough units for 1,648 new residents. I would propose that the residential A district be left as is with the current zoning, and then we look closer and harder at the village center as an opportunity for residential development and growth, mixed use, increased density. I further believe that the view from Amity Road, as one is traveling down toward Stop and Shop on Amity Road, pausing at Bradley Road, looking to West Rock in the backdrop with 245 Amity Road in the foreground. is absolutely a vision for the future of this town. The vitality, the commercial tax base, the type of village life, and the type of pedestrian linkages and access that can be got through development in the districts that are already zoned for that type of development is where I believe we should be making our focus. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to make these comments, and again, I really would urge the village district and the land that is still, the plan clearly identifies, is still available for development in those other districts. Thank you very much.
Can I just take a break for just a second? I gotta change tapes and I don't want to miss it.
I'm Phoebe Rossi. I've lived here 81 years, and I have never, in all the time I've been here, seen such a disruption to what goes on in this town. The people don't want what you are planning. You've been told that, the town's been told that, and I think it's about time to listen.
I'm Sherman at 94 Center Road, and I'm having a bit of confusion because I was part of those charrettes, and those charrettes had, as people mentioned, 50 or 100 people, and Jeff, you were there, and Alan, you were there, and we had these wonderful discussions about building more community and bike paths and developing the downtown area and making Selden Road more of a sense of community, and in none of that do I remember the idea of needing cluster housing or develop. I mean, there's a little reference to the Woodridge Country Club, but it was not a major factor. And so I feel like me and maybe others feel quite left out from the place where we came in good faith, put in a lot of time and attention, or some time and attention, to try to create a character in a town that we all really wanted. And now, months later, it's changed in character so completely or significantly. And Jeff, you're shaking your head, but in my recollection, we weren't talking about changing zoning regulations to have it be possibility of more dense housing. And I would like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of dissatisfaction, and if any of us come to understand how we got there, I think it would help us, because this is a big leap from what our vision of the 10-year plan was for a lot of people, I think. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey G. I live at 1180 Johnson Road. I'm an 18-year resident of Woodridge. I have an interesting, I'd like to point out a few interesting aspects of my residence here. I happen to pay property taxes in 3 communities, all start with the letter W. Wilton, where my business is. Wellesley, where my wife and I had a Wellesley on Cape Cod, where my wife and I had a summer home, and in Woodridge. And these are great, prosperous towns. They're very old communities. Wilton has been historically Republican. Wellesley has been historically overwhelmingly Democratic. But they share an interest in preserving the town, which I do not see in Woodridge, especially with what's been going on as vis-a-vis the golf course. Neither community, and I've been working in Wilton for 30 years, And I've been familiar with Wellesley and owned a house there for 20 years, but I've been going there since my teens. Neither would ever sell public land and see it developed. These are the kinds of towns that make our country great, make Connecticut great, and Massachusetts as well. I'd like to point out that recently the town of Madison spent millions of dollars to buy, to buy an unused golf course, airport. They could have let it be developed. It was not a great area, but they chose. And Madison is a town very similar to Wilton in terms of its educational system, which I'd like to touch on as well. They took this old airport, took some state money, and turned it into open space and recreation space. These are the kinds of things that Wellesley will do, and Wilton has done over and over and over again, and that I would urge you to do. I would also like to comment on the schools. I am involved as a coach in Wilton for 30 years, but I also have my business there. And I know that the people in Woodbridge are very proud of their schools. The Amity High School and the Amity District are the gem of this particular area. However, as far as the fields go, they're very, very poor. Wilton High School is a much smaller high school than Amity. It has approximately 3 times the fields. Anybody who's familiar with the Beecher School realizes how inadequate those fields are for the children of Woodbridge. I think it would be inadvisable to sell public land. Especially, I might ask you, what do you think the population of Woodbridge will be in 25 years, or 50 years, or 100 years? There won't be any more land in Woodbridge. That land will be needed for recreation, for the children, and for the adults also. I would say we should learn from the wisdom of the towns that I've mentioned and not act in direct opposition to their experience. Will this lower our taxes? I can state pretty categorically that more densely populated communities always have higher taxes. There are many reasons for that, but I'd just like to skip on to, and this is what baffles me, what could possibly be the advantage to Woodbridge and its citizens by this form of development? They would either vote against the politicians in power, or frankly, they'll ultimately vote with their feet and leave. That's what's happened. This gentleman talked about New Jersey. That's what's happened there. You've seen the kind of overdevelopment. We certainly don't want to turn Connecticut or Woodbridge into a New Jersey. Lastly, I would like to mention, there's a very moving passage from a book by Edgar Rice Burroughs, Tarzan, or Greystoke saga, where Tarzan has been brought back. He was born of noble stock. He was brought back to England, and in fact to Scotland, and his grandfather, who was near death, summons a lifetime of experience when he shows him the family lands, and he says to Tarzan, never, never sell the land. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jody Lant. I'm here as a resident and also as chairman of the Economic Development Commission. I want to commend you all and the London Group for really looking at our town and considering possibilities. A lot of history has been mentioned here. I'd like to point out that zoning was approved by the U.S. Supreme Court probably around 1920 in a famous case in Ohio, Euclid versus, I can't remember who. Before that time, nobody thought that you could tell, the government could tell you what to do with the property. In that seminal Supreme Court case, it was determined that the government had the right to control what would happen with their property in the best interest of the municipality, in this case, our town. Our zoning laws have been in effect for a very long time. The town brought in people out in the room to look at what has happened in the past and really take a good look at that. In my mind, simply because something happened 100 years ago doesn't mean that it is right for the current time. I think there are a lot of weighing of different items, and we need to, and you guys are charged with determining what the best interest of the town is at this current time. It's not sacrosanct what was decided 100 years ago. Look at what has happened all these years. We now have the internet. I'm carrying around documents in my lap, not even a laptop at this point. Things have changed, and I applaud you for looking at that. A lot of mentions are made of New Jersey. New Jersey has a famous case of Mount Laurel that is based upon their constitution. That type of, fortunately in Connecticut, we are not subject to that law. What the Supreme Court of New Jersey said was that each city, municipality had to provide a certain amount of affordable housing, and anybody could go in and sue, just sue based upon the right to sue. We are fortunate that our Supreme Court in Connecticut has not adopted that policy. So I think please disregard, follow that reference. I do not feel that this plan opens the town up to any of those possibilities. I applaud you for looking at the Yellow Urban Design Workshop Plan and for including the possibilities that can happen in the business district. We are a town of very, very high taxes, and most of the burden is carried by the residents because we do not have a sufficient business district in comparison to the other towns to shoulder some of that responsibility. And so by looking at the area where businesses are zoned currently, and I assume will continue to be zoned because there's no other reference of expanding that district, we can hopefully ease the burden of our taxes. The one oversight I think that I see that was not mentioned in the Urban Design Workshop Plan, that was not included, was the possibility of opening a trail to West Rock State Park that would allow hikers to come down, go up and down, and have a trailhead somewhere behind Research Drive so that people will be able to access it and then be a driver for businesses in that area. It's really a shame. It's a beautiful natural resource. We have many acres in our town that are contiguous to it, and yet we do not have a trailhead. With respect to the country club, I was a member of the country club. I was in meetings about purchasing the land. 10 years ago, that was not considered Woodbridge land. That was a private enterprise. Simply because the town stepped up and bought the land at that point very quickly, because otherwise it would have gone to a developer who would have developed it very, very aggressively and tried to most likely put affordable housing in there to get what he wanted. I think the town did the right thing to step up and to purchase it quickly. But in doing so, the town did not have a chance to thoroughly vet what the possibilities for the property is. Now, many people in this room feel that that purchase made it be sacrosanct that it be open space. I think that we need to weigh the possibilities, and we as a town need to decide whether or not we want to develop that so we can reduce some of the burdens on the other residents and decrease taxes. It came for a vote a couple of years ago. I don't think that plan was well thought out. I think the town rightly defeated it. I encourage that if this is a proposal the town has gone through, that the town bring it to a vote again, if that's what needs to happen, to make sure that people really, really buy into it, and not just the people on the room. There are many, many people that I've spoken to in the community that are intrigued by the possibility. I understand that many people here are not. You know, we live in a wonderful democracy, and you guys are charged with vetting this issue for us, and we have the whole commission. Very well-regarded members of that commission really went through the possibilities and recommended it to you, and now you have that. And I just think that it's a possibility, and you have to listen to not just the people in the room, but people outside the room also, who are not as engaged, who it's not in their backyard, and who will not come out on a very cold night to give their opinions. So thank you for doing such a diligent job. I know it's not been easy. The charrettes were wonderful, and I thoroughly enjoyed participating in them, and I encourage you to keep doing your good work. Thank you.
My name is Jeannie Grant. I live at 14 Maple Terrace. I'm not angry. I'm still in the learning stages. In May, we'll mark 2 years in Woodbridge. I don't have the history here that a lot of people do, although a lot of my neighbors are here. And what I will say is that my husband and I chose Woodbridge for specific reasons. One was the schools. Another reason was the zoning, the fact that we could have our own piece of land. And another reason was the juxtaposition of Woodbridge to Orange, to New Haven, to Bethany, to all of these places around that are very developed, that are not so developed. We spent a long time looking for what we wanted to be our perfect house. We were the ideal first-time home buyers. And according to the report, we're Woodbridge's ideal demographic. We're recently married. We have 2 stable jobs. We bought a house with enough bedrooms to fill with people besides the puppies. And I grew up in Bridgeport. My mother is an elected official there. I know what your role is. I know what development looks like. I had a 24-hour CVS at the end of my road. And until I moved to Maple Terrace and we had a block party two summers in a row, I would have told you that that 24-hour CVS is what I needed. Being here now, it's a completely different living for me. The first morning we were here, a deer walked across my yard like they owned it. It's been an experience, and our intention in coming to Woodbridge was to be one of the people that is here that say, we've been here for so many years. My house was built in '57. We're the second family to own it, and that's a huge point of pride for me. If I stand at the end of my street and look down, I can see the country club, I can see the golf course. My aunt built a house in Newtown 15 years ago, and Toll Brothers was one of the options that she looked into, and very quickly vetted them herself because they weren't a quality builder. I'm concerned with the neighborhood in which I purchased. Like I said, we have a block party, which is just the cutest darn thing you've ever seen. And I don't want to look outside of my yard while my husband's doing yard work, while I'm watching the family across from me teach their daughter, who's 2 or 3, how to ride a bike, and look down and see the megaplex and the 55 and older jazzercising. It's not why I moved to Woodbridge. I'm not saying that nothing can ever change. Certainly there's a need. I don't like that my taxes are so high, but I understand why. Again, the schools, the open spaces where I take my dog to walk are all really great, and that would be nice to stay. I understand that there's going to be developments, and my neighborhood won't always look the same that it does now. But the idea that we zone specifically for the little half acre that we now partially own, will take 28 years more to own completely, is just a really neat thing, and I'd like it to stay that way. Thank you.
My name's Kathy Wick. I live at 181 Rimmon Road. And I attended all of the charrettes and all the meetings throughout the whole process of devising the town, this draft of the town plan. And a couple of things really stuck in my mind, and I wanted to remind you of those things. And the first one, actually, I'd like to thank Malone and McBroom for, because Michael Looney at one of the meetings said that Woodbridge is unique in that it is the only first-ring suburb in Connecticut that has appreciable open space. Meaning we have something that's really special. There are 169 towns, municipalities in Connecticut. We're unique in that way. I had a career a decade or so ago that involved marketing. And so my marketing brain went on, and I thought, we've got something that's really unique. What should we do with it? We should promote it. We should build on it. We should support it. We should protect it. And that's how I feel about our open space. The other thing that really stuck in my mind at the charrettes was the talk by the housing expert, David Fink, who was brought in. A sub-consultant was brought in to speak to us about housing trends and what he thought would be good for our town. And he said that over 55 housing is overbuilt in this area. And that's a direct quote. I went back and I watched the tape on YouTube to make sure that that's exactly what he said. This man spends his life dealing with data on housing. He's an expert in the state of housing in Connecticut. And so I decided to do a little bit of my own research to see what he was talking about. And I Googled various subjects, over 55 housing, and discovered that there are nearly 200 over 55 developments in Connecticut. At least a dozen of them are within about 10 minutes of Woodbridge. They're all this, a suburban style over 55 development. Again, my marketing brain thought to itself, if I was going to be promoting a new product and entering a market, would I want to enter a market that was overserved, or would I want to look to enter a market that was underserved? In the New York Times last week, there was an article that said that this year, there will be a demographic milestone. Millennials will outnumber baby boomers. So the boomer generation, for whom this over 55 housing is being created, is on the decline. The millennial generation, my son's generation, is on the ascent. In my view, over 55 housing is looking in the rearview mirror. I would think that the town would be much more forward-looking if it is to promote development, that it promotes housing that's attractive to a generation that's on the rise. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Cynthia Anger. I live at 935 Greenway Road. I've been asked to read a statement from Kathy Gartland into the record, and then I have some comments of my own. From Ms. Gartland, I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting. I am extremely concerned about the TPZ pending plan of conservation and development. Our zoning laws have been responsible for the beautiful, bucolic town of Woodbridge. We can thank the foresightedness of our forefathers for enacting our zoning laws that date to the early 40s. The residential A zone must stand. If this is changed, Woodbridge will no longer be the town that we love. There are many parcels of land that would be open to these changes. The business district is zoned and included in the existing plan of conservation and development for the type of housing presented by Toll Brothers. This is where age-restricted housing should exist. Please don't be responsible for changing our quality of life in one of the most sought-after towns in Connecticut. Sincerely, Catherine Bishop Garland, former chair of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission and lifetime of Woodbridge resident. I'd just like to add to that nobody moves to Woodbridge with the idea that they are desperate to have high-density housing located right next to them. It's simply not why we move here. I'd also like to say that I'm addressing my comments to the high-density housing being proposed or discussed in residential A zones. And in particular, you've heard comments about the Country Club of Woodbridge, Oak Lane, and some other parcels in town. But I want to address my comments to the property at 902 Baldwin Road. As you may know, that property consists of approximately 85 acres, 75 of which is located in the town of Derby, the balance in Woodbridge. For the past 10, 15 years or so, Derby has made concerted efforts to attract developers to the portion of the parcel on the Derby side. The most recent attempt was a proposal by United Methodist Homes to build approximately 185 units of assisted living housing for 300 residents. The financing on that property fell through, and that's essentially why it wasn't built. But it also prompted this commission to enact an access restriction in the zoning regulations, so that property that was incompatible, had incompatible uses, could not be accessed through residential zones. Well, I think that the bottom line here is Derby will continue to seek development on that property, and that all of your hard work on the access regulation will be for naught, because then with the allowance of high-density housing in residential A, the Baldwin Road will no longer be incompatible with development on the Derby side. And for that reason, I don't support high-density housing in residential A, and I think that it is important to keep in mind that this regulation, let me say that over. I understand the difference between the planning function of this commission and the zoning function of this commission. I understand that this is the first step in moving towards regulations, zoning regulations that will fundamentally alter the character of our community. And so I strongly oppose the language on page 27 of the proposal. Thank you.
My name is David Boberg. I currently live at 35 Oakwell Road. Before purchasing that property, I lived at 1156 Johnson Road, right across from the Woodbridge Country Club. Unlike the people who were born here, I chose this town to live in. I lived in 4 towns before this one. And I chose this town for specific reasons. The first was the quality of the education system. The second was the proximity to New Haven, where I worked at the Young Haven Hospital. And the third, and certainly not the least, was the character and charm of the town. And that charm was because of this unique one-off architecture, this sensible land use and development, and this open space. Zoning protects those things. The previous, the administration when I came to town was headed by Russell Stoddard, who was a steward, I believe, in the area of conservation. The zoning rules were strict. If you wanted to get anything done, you had to come before the zoning board and get a variance, which was not always so easy. Rezoning will destroy much of what Woodbridge represents. It will certainly destroy the Woodbridge Country Club, or the Country Club of Woodbridge it is now called, which is a jewel of an open space, and it is essentially the gateway to what some people have referred to as Upper Woodbridge. The duck test, when applied to number 27, zoning for essentially cluster housing, would open up the country club to development in a way that we've never seen. So what is the benefit of doing this? Well, one of the things that's been stated is that it will generate taxes. Well, we all know, and other people have spoken to the fact, that residential housing does not generate taxes which offset the liabilities for providing services. Even if it is over 55 housing and there is no obligation to educate people of school age, there is still the opening up of houses that were previously occupied by potential residents of the over 55 community that will attract young families. The way to generate more taxes is to encourage business to move into town, and everybody knows that. As far as the concept of retirement housing, I'm fortunate enough to have a daughter who is city planner for the city of Miami, and she sends me information all the time. And one of the things that she sent me is that the current American Planning Association model for retirement housing is mixed use. The ideal example that they give is the town of Saratoga, New York, where you have mixed-use housing. You can walk to services, you can walk to shopping, you can walk to restaurants, you don't need a car. Putting a retirement community up on the Woodbridge Country Club where there are no services, where there's no public transportation, doesn't make sense. What is the best location for this type of housing? If indeed we have a need for this type of housing, and that was, of course, brought up. Well, where do we have our shopping? Where do we have our restaurants? Where do we have vacant land? We have it down the Brown Road. Land is flat. It could certainly be developed. I would envision something like a Nantucket community with Cape Cod houses, a beautification of the Litchfield Turnpike area and the Amity Road area with appropriate plantings, appropriate signage, appropriate medians, a lot of which has been discussed in the development of the connection to the Merritt Parkway. The irony that I see is that the town of Woodbridge voted a bond issue in 2008-2009 to purchase the Country Club of Woodbridge property to keep it from being developed. And now we see the town of Woodbridge trying to sell that property to be developed. I just don't understand it. I mentioned before that I came to Woodbridge because I worked in town. I worked at the Omaha Hospital. I worked for 42 years as an anesthesiologist there. And I had tens of thousands of patients that I taken care of. And every once in a while, one of them would say, "You have an awesome responsibility. You hold my life in your hands." And I sort of just brushed it aside. Actually, it was true. I did. But I look at this board, and you have tremendous power and much more responsibility than I ever had, because you hold in your hands the life of Woodbridge. I implore you to use your power responsibly. Thank you.
a lifelong resident, born and raised in this town, and it's a very important place to me. I've been active in this town. I rode my bike all over the place. I watched the development of Briarwood, Redwood Road, Shady Hill Road, Pinewood Road. Those are all developments that are like established neighborhoods. Those were my playgrounds. I see this, I'm very bothered by the Woodbridge Country Club and the concept of having cluster housing. And when I heard that it was going up for sale, I looked at it from the recreational point of view. I served 8 years on the Woodbridge Board of Education, always pro-child, looking for what can be best and utilized and how to, growing up in the town the way I did. And when I started Woodbridge Country Club, I'm thinking, my gosh, we have a place for cross-country running, we have cross-country trails, we have a place for just going out taking telescopes, looking up at the sky, seeing what's out there, and just not looking at cluster housing. I am at 55, I am very happy in the house I'm in. I don't need to go into a clustered area in order to be 55 and living in this city, in this town. I'm also unaffiliated as far as my voting goes, which I think is very important, and that people should realize that you can have a voice if you're not in a political party, but you can be part of having your voice heard. And I've also become incredibly addicted to Woodbridge Government Access TV. And watching what I'm seeing with the way Toll Brothers presented their program of saying that they are house builders. Okay, that's fine. They didn't say community builders. House builders, they did not mention what a condominium cost was. They did not mention having that the real estate agents that have been vital to our town and its growth be part of selling of houses if they did. I didn't see the creativity of possibly, if property needs to be sold, why aren't pieces of property and houses that are so unique in our town that we have maybe, I've counted 4 house plans that have been repeated in this town, which is pretty impressive. And there's either 1 or 2 houses that have been the same, 3 on one of them, but not much more that have been repeated. To have 170 repeat houses is just so disturbing to me. I also didn't understand what a condo cost would be. I mean, it's like if you have taxes, I mean, people moving in there, they're going to get slammed living in a condominium with taxes and ideas of maintaining it. We're just going to keep expanding. I don't understand why they have a pool and a clubhouse already on the grounds that they want to build a new pool and clubhouse. I can see that the continuation of the neighborhoods, that why aren't the pieces of property with 150-foot footage and zone A planning continue along the outskirts of Long Johnson Road so that it becomes a stronger community that are unique houses with master bedrooms on the first floor, because that's all I kept hearing on it. Anyways, I just really hope you consider that when it comes time to doing this, is that it goes to a referendum of whether zoning should be changed in this town so that everybody has a chance to vote, that you're not having that responsibility in your hands. Like I said, as on the Board of Ed, it's not popular being an elected official. It's not fun being an appointed official, but it's important to do what you're hearing from the people around you and do the right thing. Thank you.
I was surprised to learn in my neighborhood that the great majority of my neighbors have no idea of this proposed zone change. The idea is really under the radar right now, and I think it needs to be more publicized. We need a fair and honest airing of the idea. So I would hope before you act on this town plan that you refer to the Board of Selectmen that has not had a hearing on it yet. It's only fair to the townspeople that an honest hearing be conducted. Thank you.
Yeah.
you.
Please share.
My name is Anna Dickerson. I live at 425 Andrew Road, which is not anywhere near the Country Club of Woodbridge. I have lived here all my life. I'm not going to tell you how many years, but it's probably more than, at least, there are 2 people in the room I think who lived here longer than I have. I just wanted to tell you, I just wanted to tell you what a testament it is for me to see the people who are here tonight in this awful weather, in this awful week, because we really care about Woodbridge and what's happening. I really hope that you listen to what Jim Romano just said and wait until the weather is nicer. Imagine what would happen if the weather were nice. Who would forget the number of chairs we have here? There wouldn't be enough room in the building. And I've often thought how wonderful it would be if we had a town meeting with this many people. So I really wish that you would be concerned enough to wait and hear the rest of what the town has to say. Thank you.
I just left this out of my remarks from before because I had such a long list. Another bad idea, which is on page 28, is in the long-term agenda, is considering limited equity housing. Nobody asked for this. It's very questionable how well it works, and it's not consistent with our town character. So I would hope that we can also get rid of that. I thought that was a really, really bad idea among a lot of the other ones I already talked about. Thanks a lot.
Michael, can you just state your name for the record?
Yes, Michael Broderick, 5 Old Stone.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
One last point, I think it's an important one. It's being represented that sale of a piece of the golf course for housing is the only option that the town has to relieve itself of debt and to put us in a better fiscal position. That's false, absolutely false. There are other options that have not been presented to the townspeople. A straight outright sale, for example, that restores it to the tax rolls, that generates some income that will pay down debt, that gives the responsibility for maintenance and operating costs to a private entity. An outright sale is a simple and real solution, one that has been presented to the administration, but the fact that there is that option has not been disseminated. So it's really been a speedy process in that respect. All right, so Jeff, one clarification. An outright sale with a conservation easement. It is perfect.
I knew what you were talking about. I think it was a good clarification. Okay, well, thank everybody for your comments. I know it was cold. I want to thank the commission. Well, everybody has worked hard. I feel like we just got the brunt of a project that may be proposed at Woodbridge Country Club that I'll bet half these people haven't even seen. So it's really not part of our POCD, but we appreciate the comments anyway. Thank you very much.
Yeah.